If you go onto dictionary.com and search for the word cinematic, one of the definitions you'll find is as follows: of a movie showing a high level of artistry, grand and visually impressive. And when you think back across the most influential films of all time, this is certainly a sentiment that appears to hold true. The moments in films that are most often described as cinematic are often the large, the beautiful, the expansive. So synonymous has the idea of the cinematic become with this specific flavour or feel of story, that the usage of the term has even begun to spread outwards into other media that shares these characteristics, such as literature or video games. All this seems to suggest that the cinematic, and to a more broader extent cinema itself, is inescapably entwined with spectacle. And while on a surface level that might appear to be the case, when we take a step back and look at film more broadly, we quickly discover that what's cinematic can be far, far more simple than that. Take, for example, the Chamberpiece film. Those widely loved stories whose narrative all occurs in one place, across a short period of time with a limited number of characters. If we go by this definition of cinema as spectacle, then these films should be as far from cinematic as you can get. Yet you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone claiming that such classics as Rear Window or Persona are uncinematic. How then do these films, with such limited visual environments, manage to become just as cinematic as something like Lawrence of Arabia or Dune? Obvious answer: camera work. Cinematography, the way the films are shot. These films, likely in large part because of their limitations, end up using camera techniques that, while maybe not as visually grandiose as some of their non-Chamberpiece counterparts, are subtly clever in their own rights, using minimalist techniques throughout their runtimes in order to build a sense of drama that rivals any fantasy epic or superhero blockbuster. Take, for example, arguably the genre's most famous work, 12 Angry Men. Famously, the first half of the film is shot mostly at eye level, with the camera only going as close as about a medium shot. It's impersonal, cold, routine, elements which mirror the jury's attitude towards the accused. As the film goes on and the jurors are one by one swayed over by the verdict of not guilty, the way the film is shot starts to change. We start to get the introduction of close-ups and medium close-ups. The cinematography is now personal and intense, again reflecting the narrative. Now, this choice might seem obvious to anyone with even a passing knowledge of cinematography, but when it's done subtly, slowly, over the course of a 90-minute feature, the effect it has of instilling a sense of high drama into the audience is one that's completely immersive. For a slightly less well-known example, take a look at James Ward Burkitt's Coherence. Set over the course of one night's dinner party, the film takes an almost documentary-like approach with its camera work, with shots being frequently shaky and occasionally going out of focus. While one might think this would take you out the story, the naturalistic approach to the cinematography serves more to ground what eventually becomes a rather out-there tale of cosmic danger. The documentary style, by virtue of its semiotic association with that genre, gives a sense of realism to the narrative, where realism is in short supply. A feat which ultimately allows us to become better engaged with the characters. Beyond all this though, the major cinematographic trick used by these and most other Chamberpiece movies is the usage and framing of walls. Characters are almost always shot in relation to a specific wall or roof, a feature that really emphasises a feeling of claustrophobia that's almost impossible for an audience not to get engaged with. I think that's the key thing to take away from all this. That even when there are no alien armies or kung fu masters, the feeling of being trapped to various degrees, in a room or in a personal situation, is a feeling that can only really be caught in cinematography. And at the end of the day, our question of whether they have any cinematic value seems to have a rather obvious answer.